My question is for the Leader of the Government representing the Prime Minister, Senator Brandis. Our new Prime Minister has said that he wants to place science and innovation at the heart of his government. Given that the targets that this government is taking to Paris are totally inconsistent with the science and keep us firmly in place as the world's biggest per capita polluter up until 2030, will the Prime Minister now revise the targets he's taking to Paris so that they are indeed based on science and that they do drive innovation? Or is the Prime Minister just another politician who says one thing but does another?
The Leader of the Government in the Senate, representing the Prime Minister, Senator Brandis.
Well, Senator Di Natale, you mustn't have been in the chamber when I answered Senator Reynolds' question about Australia's ambitious and effective climate change and emissions reduction policy and emissions reduction target. Might I remind you, Senator Di Natale, that Australia commits to a reduction from 2005 levels of between 26 and 28% by 2030. That puts us in the median range in terms of aggregate emissions reduction, or percentage emissions reduction of comparable economies. But more significantly, it means that we are one of the most ambitious nations in the world in per capita terms. By achieving emissions reductions of 26 to 28% off 2005 levels by 2030, Australia will achieve a per capita reduction of 52%, which is the second highest per capita reduction of emissions in the OECD. Now, Senator Di Natale, you and I both know that Prime Minister Turnbull is a person who has been very, very close to this issue throughout his political career. You and I both know that there are few, if any, people on either side of politics in Australia today who have a deeper and more sophisticated understanding of these issues as Malcolm Turnbull. We both know that. Mr Turnbull proudly takes to Paris, on behalf of Australia, the second most ambitious per capita reduction in emissions of the OECD, and that's something I think we should all be very proud of.
Thank you, Attorney. Senator Di Natale.
Thank you, Mr President. Supplementary question to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Brandis. Now, we've just learned today that Australia signed up with 18 other countries to the Mission Innovation Project, which is a project that seeks to get all shoulders to the wheel in developing and deploying new clean technologies domestically. Does that mean that the government will now axe its plans to abolish the Australian Renewable Energy Agency and the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, two agencies that power that investment?
Attorney General.
Well, Senator Di Natale, you shouldn't conclude that we will do that, because that is not something that is in contemplation. What we are going to do is to adhere to the successful emissions reduction policies for which this government has been responsible. Now, I said to you a moment ago, Senator Di Natale, that we will take to Paris the second most ambitious per capita reduction in the world. Let us compare our ambition with that of comparable economies. The Canadian emissions reduction target is a per capita reduction of 44%. The American emissions reduction target represents a per capita emissions reduction of 35%, the Japanese of 21%.
Thank you, Attorney General. The time for answering the question has expired. Senator Di Natale.
Thank you, Mr President. Given that the Prime Minister supposedly supports science, does he acknowledge the widely held view that Australia's domestic contribution will be dwarfed by the approval of the Adani coal mine, and will he join those nations around the world who in Paris will be calling for a moratorium on new coal mines?
Attorney General.
Well, we certainly won't be calling for a moratorium on new coal mines, Senator Di Natale. Because we support coal mines. We support coal mines, we support the coal mining industry, and we, and some though not all elements of the Australian Labor Party, support the development of the Carmichael mine by Adani, and we wish to see it go ahead. As I've said to your colleague Senator Waters, who represents the state of Queensland, as do I, this is a project of immense importance to people in central Queensland. Immense importance. And if you've travelled to central Queensland, as I do from time to time and have done very recently, you would understand how important the Adani development of the Carmichael mine is to those people. But Senator Di Natale, our projections have been reliable. In fact, we have erred on the side of caution, which is why I was able to point out to Senator Reynolds in a response to her question that we in fact will exceed our target by 28 million tonnes. Exceed our target by 28 million tonnes.
Thank you, Attorney General. The time for answering the questions expired.